Hi, and welcome to Let's Chat. I'm Janice VanDerAa from KW Boston Northwest, and today I'm chatting with Arielle Cecala from Crowley and Cummings about estate planning. So thanks for joining me today. One of the things some of the conversations we're having when we were talking about things that might be helpful for people out there is sort of the beginning of estate planning. And I know you're with Crowley and Cummings, right? So before we get into, those documents and your advice around that issue, would you mind just telling us a little bit about how, your practice and how long you've been an attorney and some of your background?
Yeah, absolutely. So my name's Arielle Cecala. I am an attorney with Crowley and Cummings. We're headquartered in Dedham, Massachusetts, but we actually have offices all over the state. So I personally work with clients all over the state of Massachusetts, but our firm actually handles most of New England. So we do a lot of work in the area. I have been practicing for about 12 years. I graduated from the New England School of Law in Boston and have worked in the areas of estate planning, business planning, and real estate conveyancing. So in addition to my estate planning practice, I also represent buyers, sellers, lenders, and people trying to obtain mortgages and work their way through a real estate transaction.
And then what's that? So another time we'll have to chat about the business part
Sure.
of your practice too, because I don't know much about that. But for today, let's stay focused on that estate planning piece. So I know I'm curious to hear, when is the best time to think about your estate planning? What does that mean? What documents are involved? Do you have to have a certain amount of net worth to be thinking about estate planning, or
Sure.
should everyone be considering some form of estate plan?
That's a great question. It's a really common question. And the truth is, at a certain age, really once you're 18, it's never too soon to start getting your estate plan in place. Depending on your age and family status, there can be different implications for the estate planning and reasons why it can be helpful. But I know you mentioned is it your son who's coming home from college?
I have a son coming home from college, yeah.
Yeah, so even for him, an estate plan would be helpful. And really for anybody, regardless of their age or socioeconomic status, there are basic documents that everybody should have in place. So the first is a will, which is, most people have heard of. The second is a power of attorney. The third is a healthcare proxy. And what tags along with the healthcare proxy is a HIPAA release, which would allow anybody who's making medical decisions for you to have full access to your medical records. So I can take you sort of through how those documents operate and what is important to people within those documents. So the will, if you have minor children, the will is where any type of guardian is going to be named. So this is something that's really important to people. And I think when people have children, that's when they think, oh boy, I better get a will in place.
Yeah.
And so with or without children, the will is important because it's going to put the person in charge of handling your affairs. So carrying out any special requests you have about burial or cremation, making sure that all of your assets get collected, both your tangible personal property, like your furniture and clothes and jewelry, but also things like your bank accounts, investment accounts, real estate. And then the will is going to direct exactly how you want those assets to be distributed and who you want to be in charge of doing that distribution. So It's a really important document to have in place. And additionally, for people with minor children, we'll name the guardian. So I think people find a lot of peace of mind in knowing that if something were to happen to them and their spouse, that they're really going to state who is the next person in line to take care of their kids.
So is that like a once and done kind of thing, because the topic is like always kind of uncomfortable to discuss, right? So, or is it something that you should visit periodically, or how does that work?
Yeah, that's a great question. So I think, what we do when we meet and we talk about, so I have my clients fill out a questionnaire, which will go through their information, their personal contact information, the information about their family, their finances, so that we can make sure we're thinking about all their assets appropriately,
Yeah.
and also the people that they want to act as their fiduciaries. So we take that information and together we flesh out an estate plan that is appropriate for the situation that they're in at the time and also looking ahead. But that being said, things can change with people's family or financial structure. And so the recommendation is, I'd say about every 3 years, you sort of think about, what did we do in this estate plan? Who did we name? And is this still appropriate for my family? And it could be 5 to 10 years where everything's sort of static. There hasn't been any changes with the people you've designated. Your finances have stayed about the same. And in that case, you may have an estate plan that could last you 5, 10, 15 years. Or you could do something and 3 years later you win the lottery, and now you've got $2 million, and we're thinking about now morphing that estate plan to help, let's say, prepare for a Massachusetts estate tax and limiting tax liability.
Okay, great. Thanks for that answer.
Yeah.
So that would be the will. Is that the primary document, would you say, or?
Yeah. So the will only is in effect at the moment the person who, the testator or testatrix as they're called, passes away.
Okay.
So the other 3 documents are actually much more likely to be used, during people's lives for many different reasons. So those are really, really important to have in place. And one that I think a lot of people are familiar with hearing the term is power of attorney.
Okay.
And that document allows somebody to act for you in a legal capacity. So they can legally sign your name as if they were you.
Okay.
A lot of people who are married think that because they're married that they can sign their spouse's signature and that's fine. Not true. But, if you're, let's say, on a business trip and you're traveling outside of the country and you realize, oh, we have to move money around to pay this bill, or I forgot we have to sign our tax return, that power of attorney is going to allow your spouse to actually legally sign your name.
Okay.
So it can be really helpful as a matter of convenience.
Yeah.
But then people have also probably heard the word durable power of attorney. And this is where this 7-page document is absolutely invaluable. Because what it means is, if something were to happen to you, Janice, let's say, and you're alive, you've been hospitalized, but you're going to make a full recovery, but you are going to be, on painkillers for about 2 weeks. And your husband realizes, oh no, he needs to sign this check. He needs to deposit your
I'm going to be a little loopy, maybe. Yeah.
Yeah. And so you don't have capacity to sign that check. So that power of attorney is going to allow your husband to sign that check for you and deposit it.
Okay.
While you're incapacitated, but still alive.
And that's the durable power of attorney?
Exactly.
Okay.
Durable power of attorney. Now, the alternative is for, let's say, somebody who's in a situation where they're incapacitated, an elderly person with dementia. Maybe they're incapacitated indefinitely. If they have that power of attorney, their spouse or child can manage their financial affairs, pay their bills, handle things for them. But without that document, you actually have to go into court and have a guardian appointed for that person. So it's an expensive legal process, and it can actually be time consuming and really block that person's ability to have their financial affairs managed quickly and efficiently, and have that trusted person just jump right in and start working for them.
And particularly at a time that's highly stressful and sometimes sad on top of it all, so emotional. So
that's exactly right.
So we have it done in advance to be prepared for whatever may not happen is the best case scenario, right?
That's exactly right. And, we're, being in also both of us being real estate professionals, we see how things can happen where, you may be selling a house and mom may have capacity, but she may be on a slippery slope. And so she may start out the transaction being very, lucid and with it, but 6 months down the road, she has some dementia.
Right.
This power of attorney will allow her, son, let's say, to sign that deed for her.
Okay.
And keep the real estate transaction moving along.
Oh, interesting. Okay, great. Okay.
Yes. And then the other document, the healthcare proxy and the HIPAA release. Healthcare proxy, also, people probably heard that term, is going to allow somebody to make healthcare decisions for you, but only when you cannot make them for yourself.
Okay.
And a lot of people have specific ways they want to live, certain wishes maybe about things like organ donation or
Okay.
Certain procedures they would like to have or not to have. And so having that healthcare proxy in place and having them to be informed with the choices that you want made is really important, because God forbid you get into a medical situation, you're putting that person in place who's that trusted person.
So that's almost like a two-step process. So then do I understand correctly? There's the legal part of creating the document, but then you need to have those conversations with your appointed proxy in case they find themselves in that situation, right? Then they can, I guess that prompts another level of confidence in any decisions they might need to make as well, right?
That's exactly right, because the document itself, the one that I draft, is very broad, and it says that when the healthcare proxy is being used, the doctor is going to look to the healthcare proxy to say, what do you think Janice would have wanted in this situation?
Yeah.
And the healthcare proxy, having had that conversation with you and said, you know what, I know that Janice would want absolutely everything done in this. We're going to do everything possible to keep Janice alive.
Right.
And so the healthcare proxy is empowered, having that conversation with you. They know that they can make that choice. And if they didn't have that conversation with you, they're going to use their best assessment of what they think you would want.
Great. Again, not the happiest kind of document, but nevertheless, I mean, I guess these things, you have those conversations once you revisit them potentially every third year or so, and then you let them lie, right? Hoping that you don't need those documents.
Well, my favorite concept behind estate planning is actually Murphy's Law. So I believe when you have, you've got the life insurance, you've got the estate plan, you've got everybody lined up, you've got your savings account stacked full, then you don't have to worry about anything.
Nothing's going to happen. Yeah,
nothing happens,
Right. Well, I can tell you're a planner and an organizer.
I am. And I think, one thing that I really love about estate planning is it's this like temporary discomfort when you're having those conversations, and for some people to have to think about, their mortality and, what's going to happen. That is this like temporary discomfort that is offset by this amazing, really like peace of mind, where you sleep at night going, you know what, I know if X, Y, or Z happens, my kids are taken care of. I know exactly who's going to do what. There's a plan in place. They have an attorney they can pick up the phone and call for advice.
Right.
So it really, that temporary discomfort it kind of melts away once you have this plan in place that you feel good about, and you can really get a good night's sleep afterwards.
Yeah, you can feel like you can go to bed feeling like you did what you were supposed to do, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah, almost like brushing your teeth.
Yeah. That's absolutely right. And so for your son or somebody who's a younger person to have these documents in place, because once they go off to college, they're over 18 years old. If something happens to them and they're in the hospital, the doctor doesn't have to give you any information necessarily.
That's right. Yeah. And in addition to that, so once they have these documents, and once, people have that, particularly that healthcare proxy in hand, what do they do with it?
That's a great question. So I always recommend that they bring, the next time they go to their doctor, they bring the healthcare proxy, and they actually have it scanned into the system, because a lot of these facilities are paperless now. So they'll scan it right into the file, so that if you ended up in the hospital, or if you needed to have your primary care physician send something off to a hospital, then that healthcare proxy is going to be good anywhere that you end up. And
Okay.
my clients will end up with a binder that will have copies of all their documents. Their originals will be in a plastic folder that they can actually take out, and if they want to put in a fireproof safe at home, so
Okay.
the originals are safe.
Yeah.
And then I always encourage people, if they were to, like, let's say, go to the bank and use the power of attorney, that you want to show the person the original, but you want to take the original back, have them either scan it or retain a certified copy, and then to hang on to your originals.
Okay.
So that you have them. And we signed actually 2 originals of the power of attorney, healthcare proxy, and HIPAA release, so that if you did end up at the bank and they said, oh no, we have to take this, you have a backup original to use.
Great. Great. So just as we kind of wrap up here, can you just say the names of those documents
Sure.
again? So we've got that primary document, which would be used upon someone's demise. And then we have I think it's 3 other documents that would make up what you might consider a full set of estate planning.
Yeah,
documents.
that's right. So it would be the will, the durable power of attorney, the healthcare proxy, and the HIPAA release.
Okay, great.
And it's probably worth mentioning because people have heard of a lot of common knowledge about the concept of a trust.
Yeah.
And so that is something that we would put in place as part of the analysis of going through your assets and your objectives behind doing estate planning. And it may be that, for example, if we had a young family with young minor children, we would put something in place, like, let's say, a family trust, which puts a trustee in place. So in a case of 2 young healthy parents, they're the trustees of the trust, which means they get to do everything just as if it was their own asset.
Yep.
What it does is it puts a trustee in place after them. So if something were to happen to mom and dad, there's what I call a backup trustee who's a gatekeeper, who would make sure that, let's say, one of the assets for mom and dad is $1 million life insurance policy.
Yeah.
So that $1 million goes into this trust. And then we have uncle, who's the successor trustee. And instead of little Mary getting her inheritance, her $1 million inheritance at 18 years old, and creating what I like to call the Justin Bieber effect.
Right.
You hand her a check at 18 for $1 million and hope that she doesn't go and buy a Maserati.
Right.
Instead, uncle gets to make sure that she gets her college tuition paid for, she gets a down payment for her first house, she gets a car, and then at whatever ages mom and dad feel that it's appropriate, let's say 35 and 40, she'll get an outright distribution.
Excellent.
So that's one mechanism.
Great.
Yeah, that's one
great.
mechanism. And then another set of trusts that I won't really get into, but just for people who live in Massachusetts who have over $1 million of net assets, we put a fancy set of 2 trusts together that minimize as much as possible the Massachusetts estate tax.
Okay.
So there are a number of different objectives behind estate planning.
Yeah.
Protecting your family, having a written plan that's in place, minimizing the involvement of the court. So having documents in place that, for example, if you have a trust and you have your home in the trust, you may never actually need to go to the probate court. Everything can just flow seamlessly and automatically. And making sure that you have people in place that you trust that can help carry out your wishes, whatever the circumstances are.
Great. Well, that's great information and some nuggets for some people maybe to reach out if they have questions. I'm sure you'd be happy to answer and be
absolutely. I'm always happy to go through, answer any questions, and it's a collaborative process. So
great. Well, thank you so much for joining me today.
Thank you for having me, Janice.
And enjoy the sunshine and have a good afternoon.
You too. Take care.
You too. Thanks.
Be well.
Bye-bye.